Today we're going to start the process of hooking our steering up inside the shop truck. We're going to be converting to a steering rack instead of the steering gearbox that this had originally in the S10. That rack will be here shortly, and we're going to start mocking that up. And that's why we had to get this thing on its front tires, so we could set that ride height to make sure we don't have any bump steer or anything with the new steering rack. So let's go ahead and get that started. Here is the steering rack. Now this is different than what we had on this S10 chassis before. We had a steering gearbox, which operates differently. Now the steering gearbox used to live right here, which is why this is recessed out. And you can tell with everything here why that would be a problem clearance-wise. We'd have issues with radiator fitment, all that stuff. So I thought, what the hey, let's make it a better steering system anyway. We will be mounting it up here to this front cross member, and that will control our steering. First things first, now that we have all the weight on this front suspension, we need to weld a bar from probably here to up here in order to keep this lower control arm from moving when we lift this in the air, and that way when we go to set up the steering rack we can get all the angles and all the measurements correct. Alright, first things first, we are going to take all the sheet metal back off the front of this thing so we have plenty of room to get this done. And while all that's out, we're going to go ahead and clean up all the welds too and get that stuff finished up. Alright, so we got the steering mocked up. This is not the final position, but it just kind of gives us a baseline for where we're going to have to start cutting. We're going to have to cut into the cross member over here to make room for the steering input. We're going to have to balance everything out, make sure everything's level. That's why we have the level up here. Once we get that done, we can start assessing and getting the laser grid set up so that we can see exactly where we have to build these mounts. Get this out of the way so we can get everything leveled. Okay, before we mount anything and make this semi-permanent, we need to make sure that the spacing is equal and that this rack is completely centered before we start mounting anything up. The way we're going to do that is we're going to turn the input shaft all the way to one side with the vice grips gently. Okay, we'll go all the way out. Okay, there's our stop. All right, now we're going to count it back the other direction. So 1, 2, 3. So we need to turn it 1.5 back to be centered. 1, 1.5 right there. Should be centered. Put this back on, and we're ready. Okay, that's level. All right, let's get these tires off. Okay, that should give us the room we need. All right, back over you go. We're gonna have to come up quite a bit. Okay, you can see the laser line. And if you look, you see it right almost in the center of the steering knuckle on that side. Oh, calm down, calm down. There we go, okay. And then you can see it on the center of that steering knuckle also. So with that, we know everything is straight. And we can begin laying out our mounts. All right, you can see here, we've got our laser level. Now this should be able to give us some lines exactly where we need to be. So let's go ahead and fire that up. There we go. Okay, there's our horizontal. There's our vertical, that should give us our center. Alright, we need to find the center of the steering rack. The steering rack itself, end to end, is 45 inches, so I need to measure 22.5 from one end to get the center. Okay. Now we have to line up the center of the rack, the center of the cross member. You see the little black dot up there? Center of the steering rack. This is about where it needs to be. So you can see where we still need to cut. Of course, we do need to be just a smidge higher, but we do need to cut a little bit more out of that area for that pocket. And then we'll find a way to reinforce that and put the strength back into it. Well, there's a lot of different ways to mount these steering racks. We're going to have to figure out which one works best for us. So let's get started. Okay, looks like we are going to make a cardboard template again. So I just need to find another good piece of cardboard to use. Found it. All right, figuring it out. All right, that ought to work. It's pretty dang close. As you can see, I'll slide that in. Boom, boom. So let's cut. Let's try to cut a piece and see if it fits. We're gonna do it. We're gonna try to do it the right way. I think that's probably a better idea. Okay, here we go. Let's give that a shot. Alright, so what we had to do is cut out some little caps to go in the squares. Let me see if I can get you in there for that. Okay. These are just gonna slide in kind of like that, except that they'll be straight. We'll weld those in, and we're gonna weld a nut onto the back side of them in order to capture the bolt for the steering. But what we're going to do right now, we're going to put both of these in. So that one and that one. Don't mind these ugly welds, by the way. I'm going to clean those up. I could not see out of my mask at all. So we'll put this driver's side, boop, just like that. Except that it'll stay. And we're going to put the steering rack back on and put the marker through to put the holes. See where we got to mount those holes. Drill those and weld on the nut to the back side of them. And then we should be good. Okay, so the most important thing we did, once we built those ends for the mounts, we drilled the holes and then we went ahead and welded the nut onto the back side. We definitely got more weld than we needed. These are going to make sure that the nut's never going to back off. These are going to get welded into place. Boop. And then the bolt's just going to go right in, thread in, it should be fine. So what we need to do now, since this clearance is going to be really snug between the mount and the rack itself, we need to figure out how much thread is going to come through with the bolt and how much we need to cut so that we can have maybe a thread or two coming out the other side, but I don't think we're going to have much more room than that. So let's go ahead and see. Okay. And we do have 2 washers on here. For right now, it doesn't really matter the orientation. Okay. You can see we have that much threads coming out. We don't need nearly that much. We're going to take a Sharpie and let's actually, you know what? Let's just cut it right about there. And that should be good for that one. Yeah, she fits. There we go. So we have a little bit showing out the end, and that I'm happy with. Good. See if that works. All right. Okay. Got clearance for the shaft. That is mounted solid, baby. Yeah. All right, there we go. Just have to do the finish welding, and we've got to fabricate all the stuff to close in this cross member. Once we get all that done, we'll be set. Now that we finally got that steering taken care of, that took a long time, we can turn our attention to the inside of the cab. This is why I have it all mocked up this way, because I needed to check the clearance for everything to make sure everything was going to fit before I finalized the fabrication. So let me go ahead and get over here. So as you can see, We had to make some modifications here in the firewall to just make room. We didn't end up needing as much space as I originally thought we were going to for the cylinder heads, but we did need some. So we're gonna start addressing those. I gotta fix that too, but that's something I can do with the cab removed because it's just nothing. So we're gonna fill all that in and kind of get it to where it needs to be. And once that's finished, we can take the cab back off the frame, put it back on the little rolly cart, get it inside the garage, and then this winter when the weather sucks, because I think it's going to this year pretty bad, I think we're going to get quite a bit of snow, we can shift our focus primarily to the cab, finish up all the metalwork, get everything cleaned up, and start getting this interior painted and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to work on next, now that the main mock-up is where it needs to be. So next we'll be dealing with this cab, and then we'll get on from there. So there we go, guys. Thank you for watching. I appreciate everybody that liked, shared, and subscribed. Hope you guys stay tuned. This has been a fun build. It's something I've been waiting to do for a long time. So thank you guys for coming along the journey.